I lied. I really couldn't do that. Can't do it at 54. Couldn't do it when I was 4. However, it's quite a show tonight. All sorts of different issues. And that's not always easy in July. I mean, I've got to tell you, in the summer, not always a lot going on. But at Sun News, we think outside of the box, which is unusual in Canadian media. Now, my friend, the great Jerry Agar, he paid me to say great, whom you see on Sun News as a guest and also hosting for Ezra Levant when Ezra is away. He's got a fine column in the Toronto Sun today where he discusses the notion of daycare as a human right. The United Nations had declared it to be so, and Canada is now spending billions of dollars to guarantee that parents can work all hours, put their children in universal kindergarten, and then pretend that they're really good mums and dads. Jerry writes that on his radio show, Martha Friendly, head of Canada's Childcare Resource and Research Unit, wow, repeated the UN line and insisted that the right to not raise your own kids was a human right. Yeah. So the right to have other people do your job is of equal standing to the right to free speech, freedom of worship, a fair trial, and so on. Oh, what utter crap that really is. Quite so. Now, listen to this story. A few years ago, a young Montreal couple sued a local photographer. They had decided to pose for him for a group of erotic photographs as some perverse sort of gift to themselves, but it had expected the pictures to be kept private. While casually browsing, as one does, in a pornographic magazine store, do they still exist? They actually found, and it was a woman, I think, that she and her husband, or probably partner, were actually featured on large posters. Well, my conclusion is that serves them right, really. If you live by the smut, you'll die by the smut as well. But there's something else here, and that's the nature of the good lady's profession. She worked in a daycare. Now, I'm not for one moment implying that everybody who works in daycare is a consumer or an actor in porn, but I am questioning the underlying premises behind daycare and what we think it is. I know that many people who do work in daycare, kindergarten, whatever you want to call them, they're dedicated, but why should they be raising tiny children, your children, our children, in the first place? When daycare abuse occurs, and we had, just last week a child die in Toronto in a daycare, it's truly awful. Now, we're going to show you a video here, and be warned, some of the images you are about to see, but they have to be seen, are deeply disturbing.
Says he didn't watch the video, but the man who claims this 9-year-old is his grandson says the victims in the video provoked the attack.
He just ain't the only bad kid down there. He just ain't the only bad kid. The little baby scratch, he don't put her picture in the paper. All in his face. He said he told the teachers he didn't do nothing about it. So some kid had to provoke him that day to do something.
Now, again, I'm not alleging that this is typical, but it's not unique. Once you break the natural order of things, replacing parents with paid workers, lacking genuine and intimate love and concern, well, problems are inevitable. I used to host a show on 1010 Radio where Jerry Agar now works. And on one show, I discussed daycare. I'll never forget this. A woman caller, called in and explained that daycare is better for children than being at home, she said. And she should know because she worked in a large daycare centre. Well, I disagreed and I argued that she couldn't be objective because she was part of the highly lucrative daycare industry. But at least I continued, you know, your kids are under your supervision in their mum's daycare. No, she said, they go to another daycare facility, quote, so, this is what I said, so you can go out to work in a daycare so that you can earn enough money to send your kids out to another daycare. You look after other people's children so as to be able to afford to have other people look after your own. Yes, she shouted, yes, and I don't care because it makes me more fulfilled. What about your children, I asked. Don't you see the irony and the absurdity of all this? Well, she didn't, and she ended the conversation by, bang, slamming the phone down. Now, I want to immediately distinguish between those who cannot avoid using daycare and those who can. Single mothers, couples who genuinely need two incomes to put a roof over their heads. Sure, these people have to use daycare because of the dictates of our cruel economy. But can we please be honest for once? What about the others who simply prefer the fantasy of being parents to the actual reality of the job? I mean, it's so much easier to employ a woman from a developing country to be a mother for you, and maybe you can even pay her cash and get her a cheaper rate, you know? Or put them in a state daycare paid for by people who would like to raise their children themselves but can't afford to because taxes are so high to pay for daycares. Just please cut the nonsense. If there's really no economic option, well, use daycare. But if there is, do the job you're supposed to do and raise your kids yourself. If dad can do it, okay, but mum is better. There, I've said it. But a stranger should be the last resort. No amount of lies and revisionism will turn what is unnatural into what is natural.
Are these all your lunches? You mean you eat other people's lunches? Stop it!
What's the matter?
I have a headache.
It might be a tumor.
It's not a tumor.
Actually, possibly the best movie he's ever made. Genuinely funny. Now, if all daycare was like that, hey, with a Republican politician in charge of them, not such a bad thing. But I do understand, as I said in the monologue, if there's no alternative, and there are no grandparents around, and you've got to put your kids in daycare, of course. But you all know people who do it because they just don't want a parent. Or it's not that they have to have the money to keep the house. They want the money because they want that second vacation. They want that new car every 2 years. And I do think that if at all possible, parents should be the people raising their children. Anthony Furey joins us from Ottawa. I have no idea what he thinks about this, which is always part of the joy of asking, because he beguiles. Do you agree with me, sir?
Well, you know, Michael, this whole push came from a UN Declaration on the Rights of the Child, I think they call it. It was released last October, and as with so many of these things, they went after the low-hanging fruit. And Canada is like the world center for child abuse, apparently. Obviously, they're always going after places like Canada in recent years. One of the recommendations on top of childcare free for everyone was to rehabilitate Omar Khadr, to get him involved, maybe to let him open a daycare and run a daycare so he can teach his values to other children. I'm joking about that last part. I'm not joking about the first part, about rehabilitating him. So it's just part of this whole grander narrative of activism in there. The basic idea, is it a challenge to raise small children? Yes. Could one do with help, whether it's, and most of us agree that there's some role for a social safety net to assist Canadians who are temporarily not doing too well, and the government does play a role in our lives with social housing and welfare and maybe degrees of child support. So we see that there is a degree of compassion there. We did form a society after all, but at the same time, I am skeptical of the idea that anytime there is a need in a family's life, it is the role of the government to fulfill that need.
Mm-hmm. I think you put the point very well. We deal with the exceptions, if you like. Welfare is not there to keep everybody out of work, living off the state. It's there to make sure that people who are in a bit of trouble get some temporary help. that's what a civilized society does. It helps other members of that society when they really need it. But the assumption beneath universal daycare is that all children need it all the time. And it's becoming, and I think you might find this, I don't want to forget the personal issue, but as a new parent, you might find this in years to come, that if you do choose, for example, to have one of the parents at home, you're looked on as being rather strange. It's become today that if a mother stays at home, and it's invariably the mother, why? Why would you do that? That's the exception. It's the odd thing to do. We completely turn the situation around.
It's unfortunate. Being the age I am, I know a lot of couples who are having children right now, and I know many people who have multiple degrees. They've got their masters, their PhDs, they might be lawyers, they're very smart, involved people. And I'm not referring to the men, I'm referring to both of them. So sometimes the woman is the more educated one and is the breadwinner, and people make a choice to do that. They've just decided they want to stay home and spend time with the children. I mean, you begin to realize that there are many things in life. Making money is fun, going and writing books and hosting TV shows is fun, but you also begin to develop an appreciation for family life, and you want to spend time with these kids. You want to be with them. And I definitely don't think people should be begrudged for it. And let's be honest, there are already public daycare programs out there, again, for the exceptions, for people who don't have the family support. There is a strong state system out there right now that already exists. The problem with a national child care strategy, which is what's being asked for, it's the same thing with, right now Olivia Chow is doing a push for national transit strategy. What that actually means is that Olivia Chow gets to hoard over this pot of gold money that decides how all the transit goes everywhere, and she gets to determine what bus stops are in Kamloops, BC. And of course, we don't want that. We want a subsidiarity principle where what works for each community works. And I think if municipalities together decide that they're going to have a more robust childcare offering than another municipality, then fine, that's up to them to decide. But the bottom line that the federal government should be, and you know, Michael, you know that's what's going to be happening, is they're going to be deciding what happens in these childcare programs. There's going to be this idea of curriculum. I know they're not schools, but you know, we're going to have to go through this case where we go, why did they think it was a good idea to put out a pamphlet from a gay bathhouse in a childcare center? You know, it seems like a joke, but what actually happened seemed like a joke too. So we're gonna have all these issues that arise from the co-parenting nature of the child care program. No, I have no problem with giving basic supports temporarily to people who are in moments of need. That's why we collectively pool a bit of our cash together every now and then. But the basic national strategy, it is a recipe for certain people, a select number of people, getting their fingers in there and having a say in what happens.
Yeah, and of course, we don't have much more time, but now the push is to make sure that all of the jobs in daycare are unionized jobs, thus giving teachers' unions even more power, even more money, even more influence over the body politic. And as you say, the curriculum, it's not going to be a particularly conservative one. We can guarantee you of that. Thank you, my friend.
Goodbye now.